So I've recently published my first graphic novel, Culliver City Chronicles, Call 1-800-KILLER-GUY, Book 1, written by me, Marcus Acko, and illustrated by the amazing Sublime Studio. But, obviously, it's not going to appeal to everybody. Hate is gotta hate, right? I've heard good things about the book so far. I've heard great things about the book so far. But I'm waiting, and I know it's gonna come, to hear negative reviews on my book. So I figured I might as well prepare myself for those negative reviews by asking some of my experts to be brave enough to read to me some of their worst reviews ever. So that's what we're doing. Worst reviews ever. And here are my experts reading their worst reviews ever.
Well, the worst review I received as an author, you can tell by my reaction. Criticism like this doesn't faze me. I mean, yes, I'm disappointed when someone doesn't like my book, but when they're disappointed enough to write a really vicious 1-star review, I just find it funny, because when I don't like the book, I either A, just stop reading it, which does happen, but not all the time. I am fairly forgiving. But B, if it's bad, I personally don't see the benefit in writing 1-star reviews, because I'm like, just writing a review gives it a bit of a push, whereas writing nothing is fine. You know, it's I'm not gonna say it's better, but it's a waste of my time to be so negative. That's how I look at it. So yeah, this is public domain. I'm not name shaming. I'm gonna read the review because, wow. I'm not gonna say the username, but I mean, it's there on Amazon. You know, you just go to the UK store, scroll down, there it is. It's the top review because it's the most recent. So, dreadful. The association with Irish myth caught my interest, but in all honesty, this book is an insult to the Irish treasure house of ancient stories and artifacts. I'm shocked that the author has the hubris to publish this mishmash of bad grammar, bad punctuation, poor construction and poor editing, though at times it was hard to work out which was which. The dialogue was dire. The plot might have worked if the author had developed any writing skills before publishing. How other readers can have provided 5-star reviews beats all comprehension. The cover is the best thing about this book.
So reading now from the review. My biggest issue with the book was the lack of action, the lack of zombies versus vampires, and there wasn't much horror in this offering too. I'd say it was more YA fiction. You'd expect there to be room for gore and gruesome scenes, but this doesn't materialize. I'm mocking, I'm so sorry. And this took a back seat to the character-driven plot. Okay, so for me, I'm trying to gather my little thoughts here. It reads more as YA fiction because there wasn't enough blood and gore, and it took a backseat to a character-driven plot. From this little corner of the world, a character-driven plot, I will take that any day over pure blood and gore. I think, and this is the danger, it's inherent in the genre when you write about, when the literal calling card for Rise of One is vampires versus zombies. To face the apocalypse, one must rise. You're expecting blood and gore, of course you are. And there are elements of that in the book. And I think, for me, I'd rather read about interesting characters in a terrible situation and they're all trying to find their own way out over blood and gore. I can see how this is expected of the genre, but for me, it just felt a little too teenage boy-y of a response to the book. Whereas, it's interesting, it actually does fall along gender lines. The kind of male response to Blood, Breed and Rise 1 is that, oh, there's gay characters, there's not enough gore. Whereas women reviewers, on the whole, tend to be like, gay boys, psychology, nicer things. It's just, it's so interesting as an author for this to come, say, onto your doorstep and for that to be the reaction to your book. Again, in the review it says, an issue I had with the book was pacing. It was all over the place. And there are many instances where it ground to a halt where I had to slog through again. And in the same paragraph, they'll say it was a character-driven plot. So I think this reviewer wanted the drama and the blood and the gore, and he wanted his Walking Dead meets Interview with a Vampire. And that is kind of what I term this book as. But you can have your characters go through the story not dripping in blood with their throats ripped open. That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay, folks, worst review I ever got?
The one person said the genre wasn't really her thing. She was more into romance books. Problem was, the cover on the outside had a skull on it. Okay, couldn't you have seen that? The other one said he knew exactly what was going to happen 5 pages into the story. 5-book series later. But you always treat it like a professional. Any review is a good review.
So as a relatively new author, I'm always pleased when someone connects with my work, and I'm actually always really pleased when someone leaves a review, because they really are important, and not everyone can connect with your story. This is my lowest review, and although she has not really connected with humour, and she's admitted that in the review, she's taken the time to give quite detailed feedback. I'm going to share her critique paragraph with you. The one thing that kept me from enjoying Everything Is Fine fully was the humour. It felt like everything was done for a laugh, especially in the beginning. I could have done without the over-the-top incontinence undies, bull semen facial and public embarrassment. It was all too much and overshadowed the heart of the story. I struggle with comic novels to begin with, but this one was particularly cringeworthy in places. She does, however, go on to say overall Everything Is Fine was fine, which is not such a bad review after all.
And it's really funny that you told me to look for these, because one of them I checked yesterday actually is the #1 best-selling book in the UK on Amazon in educational research, which is good because when you say people don't want to hear 1-star reviews, because then if people watching this want to read a book and they hear those reviews, they go, oh, if I want to get that, I don't want to do it. That's horrible. But you can still do really, really well, even though you get some crap. It's just going to happen. Like, you're never not going to be able to please everybody. It's impossible. Anyway, here are the worst reviews I ever got. This book changed my life. I had a wobbly table and this book was the exact right thickness to place under one of the legs, so now it sits perfectly. 5-star, but just purely for that. Another one I got was, obviously, English isn't the writer's first language. I was talking about misconceptions about Vikings and one account they never ever had horns. They would be completely impractical in battle, so I explained that's a misconception people make about Vikings. And I've been to Iceland, I've seen the Viking museums and everything. And this person said, absolutely ridiculous, everyone knows Vikings aren't real. I've had 2 of them where, about my country's book, where they said, this is absurd, everyone knows Scotland isn't a country. Which I sent to my Scottish friend, they got really offended. Now, obviously they know Scotland does exist, the landmass, they just don't realise it's a separate nation to England. But this is so much worse. There was one guy who said North Korea isn't a country. Like, it's like Kim Jong-un, Kim Jong-il, none of them, that's not real. I've been to North Korea. I found this guy on Twitter and I sent him pictures saying, this is me in North Korea. There's 10,000 people dancing to communist symbols and a golden statue of Kim Jong-il. There's 100,000 people forming a picture of Kim Il-sung. Where could you do that in the world and not get arrested, except North Korea? One of the first reviews I ever received, it was for my Flat Earth book, and I knew I would get some idiots saying conspiracy stupid things. I just knew it. They'd say things like, oh, you're paid for NASA, or some stupid thing like that. And I always say to people, no matter how dumb Flat Earthers are, they always say something you can never prepare for. And the first review I got for that was simply, are you a Jew? I was like, what's that going to do with anything? I'm not, but one of the weirdest things, my very first book, which gets a lot of good reviews, lots of good ones, one person just said, I have a suspicion this whole book was written by a bot. I started writing that book in 2005. I don't even think bots existed back then. And I didn't even have broadband, so I couldn't. Ridiculous. Let's see, what else do I have? One of the first bad reviews I got, it just said, it was just a typical, this is dreadful, nobody should read this, awful, garbage, blah, blah, blah. And that was one of my first bad reviews, so I was quite upset by that. So I checked what else the guy wrote, and it actually made me feel a lot better, because 2 things. One, he 1-starred pretty much everything, just like always like almost the same type of thing. And the only things he gave 5-star to were books about bondage. One of the books was just called Bondage. This is funny. People ask me, what's the things that people most complain about at your books? Is it about when you say anything about religion or God or politics? In my misconception book, the #1 biggest complaint I've ever received of any of my books is about a fact about a polar bear. I say that polar bears do not have white fur. Their fur is transparent, and in the light it looks white, and their skin underneath is black. And I have received over 100 reviews saying that's wrong. And I'm like, I have 2 friends that their job is zoologists who specifically study polar bears. And I'm telling you, they are not. Just look it up on any link about polar. We're not lying. This is a really random review I got. It's only 5 words. I haven't read it. 3-star. Why did you review it? One of them just actually was 5-star. It's actually a good review, but I just had to say it because it's the weirdest one I ever received. It just said, lovely egg Obama for me. That's the whole review. And I checked it, and he does speak English, so I don't know what was going on there. Probably the weirdest one I got. My friends still make fun of me for this, like after 3 years. It just said, lies, so manty lies. Why you lying? You so dumb, without the letter B. Rip me from all the lies. Those are my favorite worst reviews I've ever received. I'm very proud of them.
And there you have it. Some of my brave experts putting themselves on the line to read some of their worst reviews ever. I can't thank you enough for putting yourself through that for me, for my channel. If this catches on and more of my experts feel that they would like to jump in and tackle the ball by reading out their worst reviews ever, please let me know, and I'll happily do another video again, which would be worst reviews ever, authors read their worst reviews part 2. And I promise you, the first, or no, not the first, because, okay, I promise you this, I will scour for reviews for Culliver City Chronicles, call 1-800-KILLER-GUY, for negative reviews, and I'll pick the best ones and I will read them on this channel. That's not me throwing a gauntlet down for you to go and put a negative review, unless you put a negative review and say, this book was trash, 5 stars. Then that's great, feel free to do that. But I promise I will do that. I will hunt for negative reviews about my book, Call 1-800-KILLER-GUY, and I'll put that on this channel. I'm Marcus E. Acko. I'll see you next time.